Most retirement plans have a quiet flaw that almost no one talks about, and it sounds like this. If I earn an average of 7% a year over my 30-year retirement, I'll be fine. That statement feels true. It's also dangerously incomplete. Because in retirement, the average return is almost irrelevant. What actually determines whether you run out of money is the order in which those returns show up. You might be shocked to hear that two couples can have the same starting balance for retirement, have the same investments, and have the same average return for over 30 years, and one couple dies with millions. The other couple, they run out of money in their 80s. The difference was not the average returns, it was the sequence of those returns. In this video, I want to shift how you think about risk in retirement. And I'll show you why an income-first, dividend-focused plan can make that sequence of returns far less scary and in some cases almost irrelevant to your retirement lifestyle. Hi, I'm Zach Poitra, a licensed fiduciary advisor here in Colorado Springs, and I help people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s design retirement paychecks that they can count on using dividend income, tax planning, and estate planning. This video is general education. It's not personal advice, but if you are retired or close to it, this concept is absolutely critical. Let me start by putting words to the belief most people have. That narrative sounds something like this. If my portfolio averaged 7% a year and I only withdrew 4% in withdrawals each year, the math would just work and I can stop worrying. That line of logic makes sense while you are saving. That is, when you're adding money and not taking withdrawals. While you're saving, volatility is actually your friend. That's because bad years, they let you buy more shares on the cheap. And then good years grow the base. But the problem is, the day you retire, your relationship with volatility completely changes. You stop putting money in and you start taking money out. And that flips the math completely. Now, bad returns are not an opportunity. And if the bad returns come early in retirement, they put a permanent hole in your retirement boat. And this is because you're selling more shares at lower prices just to fund your baseline retirement lifestyle. Let me walk through a very simple example. Imagine two retirees, Alice and Bob. They both start with $1 million in savings, and they each plan to withdraw about $40,000 per year, and they're going to adjust that for inflation. They invest in the exact same mix of stocks and bonds, and over 30 years, they both earn the exact same average return. Let's call it 7%. The only difference is the order of those yearly returns. Alice, she gets a rough first decade, a couple of bad market years right up front. Then, very strong market years and returns later in her retirement. Now Bob gets the opposite. He has a very strong first decade, and then the bad years come later in retirement. They have the same investments, same withdrawals, and the same average return. In real-world studies and examples, Bob ends up just fine. His portfolio weathers the later storms because it had time to grow and compound first at the beginning of his retirement. Alice had the complete opposite experience. She had really bad early years in her retirement, and at the end of her retirement, she risked running out of money completely, even though on paper, her average return looked exactly the same as Bob's. This gap, the difference between the two outcomes, is what we call sequence of returns risk. It's not a theoretical problem, it's math. And the math explained looks like this. During a tough market, I'm forced to sell shares when they are temporarily cheap And because they're cheap, I have to sell more of them to get the money I need to live on. And then I don't have enough shares left over for when the market finally recovers. You can think of retirement like climbing a mountain. The climb up, that's your working years. You save, you invest, you take risks so the pile can grow. Slips and stumbles, they're annoying, but you're roped in and climbing upward. Now the descent is retirement. You're carrying a pack that needs to last the whole way down. And slips and falls here are far more dangerous and consequential. The problem is most people are using a climbing strategy for the descent. They're still focused on average return instead of the mechanics of how cash actually shows up in their checking account. If your retirement income plan says every year we'll just sell 4% of your shares no matter what the market did, then by design you're exposing yourself to the sequence of returns risk. At some point you're forced to sell shares to pay the bills. If the bad years come early, you're selling more and more shares at lower and lower prices, and that's how good averages can still produce bad outcomes. So here's the perspective shift. Retirement is not a game of what average return can I get. Retirement is a game of how reliable is my paycheck and how sensitive is it to market swings. And that is why I favor an income-first, dividend-driven approach. Instead of saying we'll sell shares every month and hope the prices cooperate, we'll ask a different question. The question is, how do we build you a portfolio where the cash flow, the dividends and interest, can reasonably cover your lifestyle and ideally grow over time so we're not forced to sell shares at bad moments? Now, if the bulk of your spending is supported by dividends that are being paid regardless of the daily stock prices, then the sequence of price returns matters far less to your day-to-day life. Stock prices, they can bounce around and your paycheck can stay relatively steady. And with the right design, it can actually grow over time. That is a completely different way of thinking about risk. Now let me be crystal clear. Dividends, they are not magic. Companies can cut them, and nothing in markets are guaranteed. But structurally, a dividend-first plan changes the mechanics of risk in three important ways. First, you fund your lifestyle from cash flow, not from sales of stocks. You see, your core lifestyle, it's supported by dividends and interest. That means you're less likely to be forced to sell shares when markets are temporarily down. Number two, you can choose to sell for those extras in retirement. Things like big trips, home remodels, gifts. You can pair these purchases with better market years and optional sales rather than automatic withdrawals every month regardless of conditions. And then lastly, this approach allows more time for recovery. If a bad market shows up early in retirement, but you're not ripping shares out of your portfolio to live on, you give the portfolio a chance to heal when the market recovers. In practice, with many clients, we design a plan with two major layers. First, we have that income layer of dividend-paying stocks and interest, and then we add the growth layer to help keep up with long-term inflation and legacy goals. The key in this approach is that first layer. That income engine, it's designed so that your lifestyle does not depend on hoping and praying as to what the market will do next year. A common concern is, if I focus on dividends, am I giving up growth? In my view, the better question is, how much growth do you actually need to live well and not run out of money? Oftentimes, once we calculate your real spending needs, your Social Security, your pensions, and tax situation, we discover you do not need to swing for the fences for that income. We can structure a core income portfolio that targets a sensible starting point and focuses on companies with a history of growing their dividends over time. Then we use that growth layer for the extra longer-term goals. The big picture is this: a dividend-first plan does not ignore growth. It simply refuses to bet your monthly grocery money on short-term stock prices. So what do you actually do with this information? First, look at your current plan and ask one simple question. If the market had a rough first 5 years of my retirement and my portfolio still averaged 7% over 30 years, would my actual withdrawals force me to sell a lot of shares at bad prices in those early years? If you do not know the answer, or your advisor has never walked you through a sequence of return analysis, that's a red flag. Second, ask how much of your lifestyle today is funded by true income like dividends and interest versus forced sale of shares. Third, consider whether a redesign toward an income-first, dividend-driven plan with optional protection and growth layers would let you sleep better. Now, if you want help answering those questions, this is exactly what I do. I offer a retirement paycheck review for people 50 and older with at least $250,000 in retirement savings. 30 minutes together, we will show you how exposed your current plan is to sequence of returns risk, and then map out what a dividend-first income plan could look like for you. On top of that, we'll identify 1 or 2 tax or timing opportunities that you might be missing in your plan. Now, if you're interested in that, there's a link below this video that you can book a time with me. It's free, there's no pressure, and if after the session I don't think I can add value, I'll tell you that directly. Now, if you're not quite ready to talk with me directly, you might check out my 7-point retirement income checklist, to which there's also a link below this video, and that one's also free. Whether you work with me or not, I want you to retire with a paycheck that you can count on and not rely or hope that the averages will just work out. Now, thanks for watching this video, and please hit like and subscribe. And finally, I got to do a disclaimer. This video is not financial advice nor tax advice. It's for educational purposes only. Please speak with a licensed professional, such as myself, before making any investment decisions.